Welcome to the news and why it matters. I am Sara Gonzalez. Happy Friday.
Yes,
thank you.
It's Friday.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Cheers.
It's a drinking day, and then Pat's the good one, as usual.
Yeah. Morals and all that. Okay, whatever, Pat. All right, Stu, what's your top story if you can stop talking about basketball long enough to actually do a show?
Well, the top story is basketball, unfortunately for you. No, top story is Donald Trump. He's in trouble. He said some bad things to George Stephanopoulos, and he's inviting election interference in 2020. I mean, I can't believe he did it. We're going to actually look at how much of that he actually did.
Okay. All right, Pat.
Communists are coming out of the woodwork, and it's a lot of fun. We'll get into that discussion. Yeah, it's great.
Huh.
It's
okay.
great.
Okay.
It's a really good system. It's a really good system.
Sure you haven't been drinking?
Pretty sure.
What's in
I've been drinking this.
All right, Jason.
Glenn has talked a lot about deep fakes. He's shown a lot about it. Talked about the threat that they pose going forward. But it might have an unintended consequence or benefit to those of us that are afraid that our voices are being silenced on social media, online platforms.
All right. Obviously, a lot to get into. First, we want to thank our sponsor, American Financing. So if you're in the market for a refinance, home loan, whatever the case may be, these are the people that you can turn to that you know that they're not going to be in it for themselves. They're salary-based, not commission-based. So they're not in it to get you a good deal so that they can make a certain kickback, from the financial institution. They're in it really, truly to help you. Stu, you had a really great experience with them as well when you were looking for a home loan.
Yeah. Well,
Turned out that you wanted something too crazy.
It's funny. But I mean, that was one of the best parts about it is that they took the time to actually explain it. I mean, no one knows what these things mean. Let's be honest about it. They could, a mortgage company, a lot of times, the reason why Glenn, hasn't endorsed any other mortgage company other than American Financing is because, they can, it's like jewelry. Like they can tell you whatever. You have no idea what's in there. Like, is it a cubic zirconium? Is it a real diamond? I don't know. And the same thing with mortgages. They can tell you anything. But they took the time to really explain it and show, here's the positives of the way, probably a sane person would go. Here's the negatives of all of the things you're trying to do. But, they were able to explain it. And they made it easy to make a decision.
Yeah. So you can go to AmericanFinancing.net or you can call 800-906-2440. All right, Donald Trump. Obviously, very treasonous behavior.
We've learned this, yes. George Stephanopoulos did an interview. It was spent 30 hours with the president over 2 days, which has to be more of George Stephanopoulos than anyone can handle. I mean, even his own family's got to be like, all right, 30 hours is enough. Good to see you, Dad. So George Stephanopoulos does this interview. It's an interesting approach, first off, that Trump is doing this. He has not done an interview with really anybody who's been critical of him in a really long time. I mean, he's done Fox News. He occasionally will do one of these. Did him all the time in the primary. I mean, he was on CNN, MSNBC. People forget how often he was with every reporter back in the primary days. Kind of shut that off as it went into the general. Has really cut back on it since he's been president. There's been a few, he's done some New York Times stuff here and there. But this one's interesting. He's going out and he's kind of launching his new campaign. I think he wants to get back in the mix here because this is really what he likes. He likes fighting it out. So, of course, obviously, he does an interview with a mainstream media source. They pull out a quote and say that he's done something horrible. This time it was him talking about how if he was able to get information from a foreign government that was, dirt on his opponents, he would take it. So there's a couple layers to this. I think, first of all, you have this situation where one of Trump's kind of pushbacks on this is they're just taking the whole thing out of context. That's, it's not what he said. So let's watch the entire thing in context, and then we'll talk about it.
I've seen a lot of things over my life. I don't think in my whole life I've ever called the FBI. In my whole life. You don't call the FBI. You throw somebody out of your office, you do whatever
Al
you do.
Gore got a stolen briefing book, he called the FBI.
Well, that's different, a stolen briefing book. This isn't a stolen, this is somebody that said, we have information on your opponent. Oh, let me call the FBI. Give me a break. Life doesn't work that way.
The FBI director says that's what should happen.
The FBI director is wrong.
Your campaign this time around, if foreigners, if Russia, if China, if someone else offers you information on an opponent, should they accept it or should they call the FBI?
I think maybe you do both. I think you might want to listen. There's nothing wrong with listening. If somebody called from a country, Norway, we have information on your opponent. Oh, I think I'd want to hear it.
You want that kind of interference in our elections?
It's not an interference. They have information. I think I'd take it. If I thought there was something wrong, I'd go maybe to the FBI if I thought there was something wrong. But when somebody comes up with Oppo research, right? They come up with Oppo research. Oh, let's call the FBI. The FBI doesn't have enough agents to take care of it. But you go and talk honestly to congressmen. They all do it. They always have. And that's the way it is. It's called Oppo research.
I love how he's like just discovered this term, Oppo research.
Oppo research.
Oppo research. It's a brand new term. So to go over the disclaimers there, okay, he didn't just say I would take it. He said he would throw someone out of his office if there was something wrong. He said he would call the FBI, but only after he figured out if there was something wrong, right? Like, I mean, in theory, could someone come to you and say, well, here we have information on your opponent. She voted for a tax bill in 1994. Well, there's nothing. I mean, you might even tell the FBI just to, like, I don't know why they're telling me this, but there's, that's just basic information. He also said he would do both. He might listen and call the FBI. He talked about how it was Norway, who's not really a threat to us, and he said if something was wrong, then he would go to the FBI. Bottom line here is what he's saying is the second someone contacts you, you don't just immediately run to the FBI, which is relatively, it's generally speaking a fair point. I mean, I think there's a line there where obviously if like Vladimir Putin calls up and says, I have, the emails of Hillary, yes, okay, you go right to the FBI. But if it's, like in a normal conversation, people are talking to you about obviously something that's a big issue in your life, your re-election campaign, probably people are suggesting things, lines of attack, ways to go and defeat your opponent. If it's something bad, you go to the FBI. I mean, I think if, you don't call the FBI every 10 seconds. Now, is that the right thing to do? It's kind of a separate question, but it's a rational viewpoint for a person to have. He's not saying I'm going to take, information that's, damaging to my opponents from foreign governments without any qualification. And that's kind of what they're saying. So there are some disclaimers there. I think there's a real point to be said about Donald Trump of like, you need to know how this would be viewed. A lot of times he just doesn't seem to think about those things at all. But I think that kind of goes to what the fundamental problem with the media analysis on this is. It's like they're trying to make it look like Donald Trump is inviting, foreign invasion into our elections. He's saying he wants this information. He wants our enemies to do these things and display them to him. And in reality, can we be honest about it? What Donald Trump is doing, this has been his position from the beginning. When he was first accused of having these meetings at Trump Tower and taking this information, his immediate reaction was, well, of course I'd take the information. It doesn't mean anything. I mean, if it was bad or something untowardly, then I would do something about it. But I want to hear what's going on. Everyone takes information about their opponents. So, like, that was his position back then. He's just repeating it. This is the same thing he's been saying the entire time. And if you wonder why he's repeating it in the middle of an interview, the answer is not because he's trying to invite foreign influence. The answer is he's already said it, and he's not going to change his mind because the media asked him about it. He's more concerned with not giving the media credit that he was wrong before. Because if he said, well, I would not take it this time, they would say, well, we told you that before, and you said it was okay to take information. So he's more concerned about that dynamic than any information that could come from Russia or China. He just doesn't want to give a win to George Stephanopoulos. It's how he views all these media interactions. It's got nothing to do with a massive, like they're talking about treason, they're talking about impeachment, they're talking about charges against him for these comments. It's just Donald Trump going against the media yet again. It's how he views all of these fights. It's a media battle. I'm going to win it in the moment. It's all throughout the Mueller report. It's all when he's talking and he's in there saying he's lying. He's lying because he wants to beat the media, not because he cares about the investigation. It's just another tired attempt to try to make this gigantic controversy out of something that is really avoidable, yes, for Trump. I mean, he could have just said, look, after all of this, obviously I wouldn't take it. I would just because I don't want to hear about it again. Like, that's the easy answer. But Trump doesn't want to give even 1/10 of a point to someone he's being interviewed by. And it's understandable, I think, to most people.
Well, just really quickly, where was this concern over the Steele dossier that was commissioned and financed by the Clinton campaign and the DNC?
And again,
I mean, that came from a foreign source, right? He went to Russia and got this information and brought it back. I don't recall any, claims of, treasonous behavior on Clinton's part for going and getting information from a foreign source. So It's interesting to me.
And I will say, too, I'm somewhat critical of people who basically say deep state anytime anyone criticizes Donald Trump, right? Like, I don't think a lot of those arguments are legitimate. We've talked about them 100 times on the show. But the idea that, this is a very pure example. The Hillary Clinton campaign paid an intermediary to get research that was provided by a foreign agent who was researching people through a foreign land and a foreign government. Like, it is, Absolutely. They're not. Their legitimate claim is, well, we didn't know this firm that we paid that had people like Anita Dunn working at it. I mean, it's not like these are just like random lawyers and stuff. These are like massive figures in the Democratic Party that they went and they got foreign information about someone else. Like the idea is that they asked for it and it was presented to Trump and Trump said yes. Right, like, and Trump did say, and it was Donald Trump Jr. who wanted that first meeting. Yeah. But like, they didn't get anything out of it. They actually did get something out of it on the Hillary Clinton side. They paid for it. They asked for it. Mm-hmm. It was a foreign source plus a foreign government, and that is like legitimately thrown out there as if it's one of these sort of like MAGA hat points. That's like, oh, of course you're going to say it's Hillary. Yes, a lot of times I think people who are defending Trump just throw the word Hillary out there as if it's, just like an automatic defense to it. But like, if you really have a problem with him taking information from foreign governments, you have to have a problem with the Steele dossier and how it was prepared.
Two things on this. I've heard this reported like a gazillion different ways. The first way was that, oh my gosh, Trump said that he would listen if a foreign government came with him with dirt on his opponent. And that was just ridiculous to me. And so, I mean, just actually game through that for a second. Let's say during the election, Benjamin Netanyahu and his intelligence head in the Mossad comes to him and say, hey, this Bernie Sanders guy, we've got, there's payments that he, gave to Hamas or whatever. Mm-hmm. Every president in the history of forever is going to listen to that information.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That's absolutely stupid.
And every candidate.
So that is a non-talking point to go, oh my gosh, he would listen? Of course he would listen. He would be derelict of duty if he didn't.
Yeah. He's just honest about it.
Yep.
Whereas the rest wouldn't be.
Right. So, but the thing that's kind of stupid is the whole FBI thing. Like, I guess his political unawareness is kind of staggering at times. Like, every president would probably listen to the information, would take it in, immediately, whatever it was, and this is what he should have said in the interview, yeah, of course I'd give it to the FBI. Of course. Then it gets leaked later and the information comes out anyway. Mm-hmm. That's how it works. Mm-hmm. And that's how it's always worked. It's just that I don't know. A lot of times you're like, just no, don't say that. Just shut up for a couple seconds.
It's partially, I think, defending his kid, right? Like his kid was in this interaction and didn't do that. So if he says,
and he was
yes,
talking about that at the beginning
yes,
of that interview. He was defending him.
Yeah, he was saying, my son's a good guy, and like this is ridiculous. And I think he also doesn't want to be seen as. One of the things you'll always notice about Trump is he doesn't want to be seen as making a mistake. People used to say to us all the time, well, we would bring up something like he wanted this tax thing, and when he ran in 2000, which okay, you're looking at his history, like he ran for the Reform Party, he ran as a real liberal, like these are important things, and people would say, well, no, he's changed his mind on that, and it's like, well, he's never admitted he's changed his mind on it. Like he never said, like I used to think high wealth taxes, which Elizabeth Warren is currently proposing, those things were good, and now I think they're bad. Like all he said was, well, I mean, that was when the deficit was a different size. Like because that's not because I think in reality he actually has changed his mind on it. But it's not a thing that Trump can do, is admit I used to think this and I was wrong then and I'm right now. Like he has to be right the whole time. It's just part of his persona. And like it's so the thing that pisses me off about these situations all the time is the media knows that. Mm-hmm. They know exactly, they can translate Trumpian by now. They act shocked by these things. I can't believe what he's saying. You know exactly what he's doing. Of course, yes, he would have a conversation. But I mean, if Russia came to him and was like, look, this they're trying to plant information and they're doing these things. Like, generally speaking, especially now, of course he would go to the FBI. He's never going to admit it to George Stephanopoulos, though. Like, he thinks about these things differently. To him, the bad thing would be admitting the politically correct thing to say. Mm-hmm. Like, if he went and he switched, that's the weakness to him. Where everyone else on Earth has the opposite view. I understand why they have the opposite view at times. But, this has obviously worked fairly well for him. He's the president of the United States.
Yeah. All right. Back in a minute.
I would only take information from Antarctica. If they came and they had information on
before we get back into the conversation and hear about how awesome communism is, I guess, we want to thank our sponsor, Cruise Through History. So there is a really awesome cruise taking place in spring 2020 that you guys really need to be a part of. Stu's going to be going. It's all along the Eastern Mediterranean. So it's Jerusalem, Venice, Croatia, Greece. Did I miss any?
Did you say
Israel.
Yeah.
Oh, I said Jerusalem, but
Oh, yeah. Is it
so
Jerusalem? I think it's in Israel. I don't think it's Jerusalem though. But
Okay.
either way, it's going to be awesome. You're going to get all like they kind of did it as in a cool way, like the beginnings of commerce, the beginnings of certain types of thought, the beginnings of faith. Like it's all the entire sort of history. Cruise through history sort of really does explain it well, and Cruise explains it well too, because it's not just like you're on a boat and then like occasionally Glenn comes out and says something about history. No. An entire cruise, and cruises are fun no matter where you go. So you get a fun cruise, you get it's like an amazing Italian cruise line, like real Italian food, authentic Italian food, like great beach and pools and bars and all the fun stuff that you like from a cruise. But then you get all the really cool history stuff too. You get the fun, you get the history. It's going to be a really cool package.
and then on top of that, you get to gain like 10 pounds from all of the awesome
If
Italian
I gain
food.
only 10 pounds on this trip, I would be very disappointed in myself. I expect to sink the ship. I'm going to eat so much.
You can go to comesailaway.com to pick your package. They've got a bunch of different options that you can pick from. So you can go to comesailaway.com for details. Make sure to mark your calendars and go book it. All right, Pat, you said communism is good?
Well,
we should embrace it.
Yes.
Okay.
At least if you're to listen to some of the people who are being elected to office lately. It's kind of amazing because Glenn, 7 or 8 years ago, predicted that eventually they'll just take their mask off and just start admitting it. Yeah, we're communists, we're socialists. And they're doing exactly that. And it's because, as he said, they'll just say that, this system doesn't work. Why not? Why shouldn't we? We'll go to a system that treats everybody equally. That's the whole thing that just about every Democrat who's running for president right now is saying. Then we had this wonderful woman. Her name is Candy DeBaca, who ran for city council in Denver, Colorado, and she made a little statement before people voted, and it was kind of an interesting statement. Here's what she had to say.
Do we have that? Okay, they don't have anything.
Oh,
Yeah. Okay. Can you recreate it? Do you have a you can do?
Live TV, people.
well, she talked about how the capitalism doesn't work, and that it's been failing, and everybody knows it's failing, and so now it's time to for the government to take ownership of the means of production. I mean, she just spouted Karl Marx, and she was elected. After the speech, she won the runoff.
Oh my gosh.
Won the runoff.
Where's this?
And Denver, Colorado.
Wow.
She's now a city councilman. She said she will bring about communism by any means necessary. No.
Oh,
in
just by
Colorado.
any means necessary.
By any means necessary. You talk about taking the mask off and just saying it. But the more frightening part of this, I think, are the people voting for her. Because if you don't know by now, that capitalism has been the greatest system in the history of this planet, and has pulled more people out of poverty than anything else in the history of this planet, and that we became the nation we are, the wealthiest nation in the history of the world because of capitalism. What do you mean it doesn't work? What are you talking about? It doesn't work, and we all know it doesn't work.
It's even brought communist countries out of poverty.
Yeah.
China would not be what they are now without capitalism.
Right. They brought almost 600 million people now out of poverty because of capitalism.
Right.
It's so easy to see that capitalism is the one that works, and it's communism that has failed everywhere it's been tried. Communism and socialism fails every single time.
Yeah, I was listening to a interview with a Republican pollster who was talking about like what Republicans need to know for 2020 going forward, and a few really interesting things in there. Number one, they said all the panels they talked to, the number one person who defines the Democrats, these are from normal people, overwhelmingly Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. That's what they think. That's what the average person thinks of the Democrats. That's an incredible blessing for Republicans.
Wow.
Like if you can get the American people, I mean, Republicans have been trying to convince the American people that Democrats are socialists for 100 years.
Right.
Like, and now Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has just handed them this on a silver platter. Yeah, we are socialists, and they just say it. And that's an incredible moment. And he also talked about how like it really depends on who they run, and like if people. Look, Joe Biden is no moderate, but people perceive him as a normal Democrat, where they perceive Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren as this sort of far leftist. And it really does depend on who they select as to how competitive this thing's going to be.
Although even Biden has adopted universal health care. Even Biden wants Medicare for all, which is socialized medicine.
Does he want Medicare for all?
He has said if we're going to have, that was the whole thing the other day when he said we're going to have socialized medicine, so of course the government is going to pay for abortions.
The Hyde Amendment thing is amazing too.
Yeah.
I mean because here's something that isn't even overwhelmingly a popular stand among Democrats. I think the polling on it is like 55-37 in support of public funding for abortion.
Okay.
Among Democrats.
Wow.
It's unpopular among independents and obviously Republicans. So this is a stance that's going to hurt him in the general. The idea that he feels he needs to change that. I mean, 55-37 among Democrats is not a position you need to change. Right. But his advisors are all telling him change, and
he did.
he's listening, which is amazing.
Did you see the lineup of who made the first Democratic debate? And it's like they almost didn't have enough room in the graphic to put everyone's picture.
Amazing. 20 of them. The 20 are in, a few are out.
I think it said it started at 9 Eastern. Like, the thing's going to go on until 2 o'clock in the morning. How
easily?
Why are they starting it so late?
This is the Maddow moderated?
Yeah,
Is that
and like a host of others too.
There's going to be some hardball questions.
You know it.
It's going to be tough.
You know it.
Well, hopefully she is at least pushing them to the left. Make them admit, they're crazy. What's their global warming thing cost? Like, make Joe Biden say that he wants to spend $5 trillion.
Will she do that? I don't know. I
don't know. She wants to, I think, the same way that if we were moderating a debate, right? Like, I wouldn't want to ask him, like, what do you think about impeachment? I want to know, like, okay, like, hey, here's a libertarian stance versus a conservative stance. Which one are you going to? Like, and I think Maddow is a legitimate, basically a socialist, so she's going to care about how left these people are. I would not be surprised to see her at least push the moderates.
Maybe.
And that could be positive because.
And the moderates would be.
I know. I can't. I use quotes whenever I say moderate with the Democratic Party. Don't we know that? I'm using air quotes.
But I mean, seriously, who do you think they perceive to be moderate?
Biden, for one. I mean, number one for sure. I think Klobuchar. I think. And then there's people down the list like Delaney and Tim Ryan.
And Hickenlooper has been.
Moulton.
Yeah.
He's been Hickenlooper.
I don't think Moulton made the first one.
Moulton didn't. You're right. Bennett did, however.
Yes.
Hickenlooper did. So I mean,
the only ones who didn't are Steve Bullock.
Yep.
Wayne Messam.
Yep.
Seth Moulton.
Marianne Williamson's in.
Williamson's in. That's going to be fun.
She's in.
Williamson's in. This is Sarah's chosen Democrat. I think she's voting Williamson if she has to vote. Gun to her head, she's voting Williamson.
Gun to my head that I have to vote Democrat?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think I'm going Yang. I think I'd go
Really?
Yang. I think in a spot, if I had to vote for a Democrat, I'd vote Yang, I think.
You want that extra $1,000 a month?
I do. I know.
No, I think, but because you respect him, because he has well thought out.
Yeah, he's very well thought out.
For everything.
So we will slide into socialism, but at least he's thought it.
At least he's thought about it a little bit. And some of his stuff, I think the reason why I know Andrew Yang is not going to win is because he occasionally says things that are sensible. That's not a plausible thing to do in the Democratic Party right now. You should not be making sense to me at all.
He also actually has civil discourse with the right.
Yeah,
which is also not allowed.
Again, you can't go on Dave Rubin's show. You can't go on.
Who is
Ben
not
Shapiro's
on the right,
show.
by the way, Dave Rubin.
I know.
But they think he is.
What about you guys?
Yeah,
You had
gun to your head.
Had to pick gun to your head. Had to pick a Democrat to vote for in here.
Biden, straight up.
Biden.
He knows what he can and can't do. He's played the game. Nothing's going to change. We know exactly what it's going to be. It's going to be the Obama era, which probably means, besides the Obamacare thing, which was a disaster and a complete what the heck.
Survivable disasters, right?
Right, but you know exactly what we're going to get. And it's nothing that can be undone in the next presidency.
I might go with the only one who has sworn off socialism, and that's Hickenlooper, who said, Medicare for all is not. It's not feasible. College for all, free college is not feasible. None of these programs work. They cost too much. I might go with him.
Interesting. All right, back in a minute.
4 different ones.
Yeah.
If I had to.
We asked Michael Lee who he thought the best in the Constitution was, and he said Klobuchar.
Yeah.
Which I thought was
That was
interesting.
surprising.
Yeah.
That group.
Before we go into overtime, is Elizabeth Warren, is she having a moment?
Oh, I think so.
She's having a moment.
Yeah.
Which is terrifying.
She's very terrifying. Very terrifying. She's luckily specifically designed for Donald Trump to defeat. So, she's like a robot out of a factory for chosen Donald Trump opponents.
Yeah.
So that's
it just shocked me, though. I mean, you go around telling people that you're Native American and lying about it on forums, and then you get completely busted. And the media actually picked up on that story.
Yep.
Still.
She did it early enough, though, that it's faded now and it doesn't feel like it's a thing anymore.
Make sure to tune into blazetv.com for overtime. It starts now.